and welcome to another episode of Reese's Random Reviews. I am Reese, and I'm about to give you a random review, and welcome to a very special episode called Which One is Better? Okay, so if you remember about a month ago, I did a little special episode called Which One is Better? Basically, I talk about two films which are so similar in plot, character, story, basically nearly everything is about the same, and I talk about which one in my opinion is better. And today's episode I'm going to talk about Planes, Trains and Automobiles versus Due Date. Okay, so what is the actual similarity between these two films if you haven't seen them? Okay, well, both films tell the story about two business guys or two hard-working guys who need to get home to their families for a very special occasion. Steve Martin needs to get home in Planes, Trains and Automobiles because he wants to get home for Thanksgiving to celebrate with his family. In Due Date, Robert Downey Jr. needs to get home because his wife is about to have a baby. So basically, these two characters end up going on a massive road trip when getting home becomes really difficult. Steve Martin has trouble trying to get his plane because apparently there's a snowstorm going on in his area. Meanwhile, Robert Downey Jr. is having problems trying to get home because he was, apparently mistaken for a terrorist. So he's not allowed to be on a plane. That's okay. But basically, both films are very different in very different ways. So, for example, Planes, Trains is an 80s comedy, so it has that sort of classic 80s comedy style. Due Date is for basically this generation, so it involves a lot of drugs and car chases and lots of sexual jokes. Because that's what we get in American comedies these days. Nothing but that. But basically I'm here to talk about these two comedies to see exactly which one is better. Obviously, remember, every time that I talk about this film, this is just my silly little opinion. If you guys enjoy one than the other and you think that I'm wrong, then that's okay, good for you. But this is just my opinion exactly on what I think on these two films. So I'm going to talk about, in these two films, I'm going to talk about the characters, the story and the comedy in each of these ones to say which one is better. So, let's start off with the story. Okay, so in Planes, Trains and Automobiles, Steve Martin is trying to get home for Thanksgiving to spend time with his family. Unfortunately, he can't get there because there's snowstorms nearly all over America, so his plane doesn't land into where he needs to go. In the end, he ends up meeting John Candy, who is this big lovable rogue, who basically decides to take him on the journey to get home. And basically, they literally travel in planes, trains and automobiles. And it's just a hilarious journey. In Due Date, it's another hilarious journey, but Robert Downey Jr. has got to get home for his wife who's pregnant with his baby. If he doesn't get there in time, then he's going to miss the birth of his firstborn child. And sort of like Planes, Trains, he can't get home because, well, he ends up in a very bad situation. Although it's much worse than Planes, Trains. He actually gets mistaken for a terrorist. So he can't go on the plane, so he tries to get home in different ways. But literally, unlike Planes, Trains, they literally have to travel home over just by car. So it's literally just set in a car, which is much better, I suppose. I mean, that's probably one of the difference. But basically, it's another big road journey. Zach Galifianakis' character is obviously another dumb, lovable rogue, but in a different side, he actually has a dog with him on the journey. And like John Candy's character, he basically likes to annoy the hell out of him. Both films have this sort of same formidable pace in a different way, but Due Date is a bit more quick paced and a little bit more rushed. I mean, apparently Todd Phillips was so desperate to make a follow-up to The Hangover, he was determined to make a film as soon as possible by using again Zach Galifianakis, who was of course the star of The Hangover. He was determined to make a follow-up, so he decided to make this film called Due Date, and he even admitted in interviews that he got inspired by Planes, Trains and Automobiles, and he was also really desperate to cast Robert Downey Jr. as his main character. But saying that, Due Date is a really interesting story along with Planes, Trains, but if you compare with Planes, Trains and Due Date and you've seen them both, then you're going to know that Due Date is kind of a little bit more ripped off with Planes, Trains than anything else. So I'd have to say, for best story, I'm going to have to choose Planes, Trains, because the story is a bit more relaxed. You know, there's not too much gone into it. It's nice and simple, it's steadily paced, and it's also just more enjoyable to watch. With Due Date, you have to watch it as if you have to keep up with all the characters and what they're saying and what's going on. They just go on so fast. So I have to say, for a nice steady pace and more enjoyable entertainment, I definitely have to go with Planes, Trains and Automobiles. Number 2 I'm going to talk about is the characters. Okay, so both characters are quite similar, but there are some differences. Okay, for example, Steve Martin's character is basically this hard businessman who just gets so annoyed with life so easily. I mean, okay, he's frustrated, he wants to get home, but he turns into a little bit of a bastard when he meets John Candy. I mean, he's really cruel to him, even when he's trying to help him. But saying that, Steve Martin actually has a bit more of heart when he sees John Candy. He then decides to tag along with him. Steve Martin is actually a bit more very comical as well. Like, he just has to make everything so funny. Like, when he's angry, he's funny. When he's happy, he's funny. When he goes hysterical, he's funny. Steve Martin is a very likeable character. Whether he's a bastard, whether he's a nice guy, he really knows how to play it. Now, let's talk about this legend most of all. John Candy. Oh my god, I love John Candy. I am such a huge fan. I loved him, not just in Planes, Trains, but in The Grey Outdoors, Cool Runnings, Who's Harry Crumb. I could go on. I basically am a huge John Candy fan. John Candy just delivers every single comedy he does in just a fantastic way. I mean, he's just funny, he's natural, he's just hilarious. And plus, what I love is that he just brings so much enjoyment to his comedies. Also, the chemistry between Steve Martin and John Candy in this film is just amazing. They make such a great duo. I mean, John Hughes really did a great job when he was casting these actors. I mean, Steve Martin and John Candy, they go together like bread and butter, and it works so well. Now let's look at Due Date. Okay, Robert Downey Jr. with Zach Galifianakis. The chemistry between these two, I don't know, the chemistry was a little bit on and off. But not just that. Robert Downey Jr.'s character was a very off-putting in this film. Let me explain why. Unlike Steve Martin, he's actually more of a not very nice guy. I mean, he's actually more angry, he's more vicious, he's more violent, he's more... I mean, yeah, okay, Steve Martin might have attacked John Candy in Planes, Trains, but all he done was shake him about a bit. Robert Downey Jr. actually threatens to kill Zach Galifianakis' character in this movie. I mean, seriously, it's just so violent and scary. I mean, it's kind of like watching a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movie. You never know if Robert Downey Jr. is actually going to kill him. Plus, there were times where I actually thought he was actually going to kill Zach Galifianakis' character in this movie. I'm really serious. It's just so, like, you know, it's kind of scary to watch Robert Downey Jr. in this film. I mean, don't forget, this guy's Iron Man, so he would kill Zach Galifianakis if he could. But let's talk about Zach Galifianakis' character. Okay, his character, you know, he's not trying to compare John Candy whatsoever. And he's also very funny, but he's not as funny as John Candy. I mean, no, don't get me wrong, this whole film is definitely just scripted because it's scripted. But John Candy and Steve Martin's chemistry works as if they've never even wrote the script. They're more natural actors, they're more fun. The dialogue that these both characters have is funny. With Due Date, it's just a typical American comedy you see most of the time. The whole thing is just a little bit messed up. Some of the jokes aren't as funny. It's too much all about drugs. It's too much all about car chases. Also as well, I love the fact that they almost compared the whole costume idea. Do you remember the scene in Planes, Trains when John Candy turns into the devil? That's really funny because it shows how insane he can be. But when you watch Zach become a bear and Robert Downey Jr. is high, that's not as funny. I mean, the only funny part I did love about in Due Date most of all with Zach Galifianakis is the scene where he thinks he has to have a wank to fall asleep, and the dog is doing it as well. Yeah, there's a little dog in Due Date which actually steals the show more than Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis actually do. So I'm sorry, but if I had to choose a best star in Due Date, it would be the dog. But as for characters, the point again goes to Planes, Trains and Automobiles. Okay, finally, now I'm going to talk about the comedy. Okay, let's talk about the comedy. Right, both films are hilarious. I'm not going to deny that. Both films have me laughing so much, it's great. But Planes, Trains definitely wins it for me because, as I've said before, the dialogue is natural, the comedy is great, the chemistry between John Candy and Steve Martin works, the comedy in that is also very unexpectedly funny. Plus, the jokes in Planes, Trains are just absolutely bizarre. You have to laugh at them. With Due Date, some of the jokes are a bit too much cliche, some jokes are too much as in like trying to be funny, and some jokes are a little bit eh. I mean, there are some jokes in Due Date which I have laughed at and thought, that is just so funny. But I don't think Due Date has made me laugh as much as Planes, Trains. So I'm sorry, but the best comedy goes to Planes, Trains. Okay guys, that's it. I just wanted to talk about that, and I'm glad that I threw in another random review to you guys. But what did you think was funnier? Did you prefer Planes, Trains and Automobiles? Did you prefer Due Date? Did you prefer John Candy or Zach Galifianakis? Do you prefer Steve Martin or Robert Downey Jr.? Do you prefer John Hughes or Todd Phillips? If you prefer Due Date, then why don't you let me know? Okay guys, that's all got 2 or 4. More random reviews will be on the way. I'm glad that you got to finally see another new episode. New stuff is coming on the way. Subscribe, comment, dislike, like, whatever you want. As as long as you guys liked it or whatever, that's completely up to you. And I'm Reese, and I've just given you a random review.